I realized that I had not one joyful thing, not one healthy relationship, not one meaningful creative expression. Everything was just work and struggle and disappointment and conflict.
Hmm.
And at that point in my life, there was a moment of complete surrender.
Welcome to We Be the Change, where we explore how changing ourselves changes the world. I'm your host, Colleen Akiko, Essential Connections Coach. In the first segment of the series, Living as a Portal of Presence, the inner work that changes the outer world, we're joined by Spiritual Director Brenda Heldoorn. Brenda shares the pivotal moment that led her to deep healing and a new path, and we consider how pain can be a gateway to transformation. Well, I am delighted to be here with Brenda Heldoorn. Brenda and I both live in the Tahoe area, and she is the spiritual director of the Center for Spiritual Living Tahoe Truckee, as well as being a licensed spiritual counselor. I have known Brenda for several years, and I have yet to know her better, which is what this conversation is all about. Now I get all the juicy details that we haven't had a chance to talk about. I really treasure you, Brenda. I love the way that you come in whatever group we are together in, a small group or a larger group. I look at you and I see that you are completely present. You are there. And that inspires me so much. I'm just wondering, off the cuff, do you always show up that way, or do you kind of prepare before you are in conversation or in a group? I know you facilitate several small groups and book groups, and you do sessions as well. How do you prepare to be so present?
Well, in the very beginning, when I was just starting out on this path and I was studying to become a practitioner, I would get so nervous if I knew that I was going to be invited to do an invocation or a benediction, and I would want to write things out and I would want to memorize them. And I'm so grateful that I outgrew that, because truly all that's being asked of me is to be present, just like you said, to show up and bring all of me forward. And then whatever needs to be said in the space, and more importantly, whatever I need to hear in that space, I hear it and it lands in me. So no, I don't over prepare, but when I'm facilitating a small group, if I'm teaching or we're studying something, of course I prepare the material, but I don't write out scripts. The most I might do is an outline. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. And that works best for me as well. When I write more than a page, I get lost on the page and I'm no longer present. Yeah.
Right.
And I have noticed that when you are in the group, if I'm facilitating, sharing music or speaking, I only need look at you and I see that you are connecting not so much with what I'm saying, but where it came from and what the essence of it is. And that helps me a lot, just to keep my own bearings. And I suspect that when you are with a client, coaching client or such, that, well, I can vouch for it, that it's palpable. I see it in your face. Thank you for doing that. Where did that come from? When did you recognize this deep inner longing?
Oh goodness. Now we're going to go back to the origin story, right?
Okay. What's your origin story?
There's an origin story. And I'll paraphrase some things because my story is probably not terribly different from a whole lot of other people. I grew up in a family where both of my parents were very sick alcoholics. So that was the beginning of the kinds of things that shaped me. But what it meant to me at that time in my life was that I was working without a net. I didn't have a safety or a fallback. Whatever I was going to experience in life, I had to do it on my own. That was my belief. My deeply held belief was that I was on my own, and whatever I was going to experience in life, that was going to be up to me. So that in turn informed a lot of the decisions that I made. So for 40 years, I spent my life thinking that the whole weight of the world was on my shoulders.
How did you cope with that?
It was heavy. And I think for a lot of that time that I experienced some grace, I was quite driven. So I put myself through college, and I knew I had to land on my feet right after college and get a job, and I did all of those kinds of things. But over the years, there was some grace in that there were people that believed in me. There were friendships along the way, and there were moments of joy. But for the most part, the overwhelming story at the time was one of struggle and lack and limitation, and always, if I get just a little bit ahead, then something will go wrong, and, just a great deal of pressure. And so when you ask the question about where this presence came from, it literally came from a moment of absolute surrender. From a time in my life where I realized that I had not one joyful thing, not one healthy relationship, not one meaningful creative expression. Everything was just work and struggle and disappointment and conflict. And at that point in my life, there was a moment of complete surrender. And that surrender looks like it can't possibly be any worse. So what have I got to lose? I've lost everything. So if I'm going to carry on in this expression, this particular iteration, if I'm going to carry on, something has to be different. And then the moment I made that decision, the waters parted, the clouds opened, the sun. No, nothing quite so poetic. I was working as a project manager for a company where I was responsible for coordinating new construction and remodels for this corporation. And I was finishing up a job that had just been brutal. And I injured my back pretty seriously, to the point where I was having difficulty walking. And so I had gone to see a chiropractor. And that chiropractor is the one who set me on the path. In the process of her treating my back, she had invited me to come to the Center for Spiritual Living in Santa Rosa. That's where I was living at the time. And from the moment I walked in the door, I knew that I was home. And so I belonged there. What I heard, everything I heard was speaking to me. And there was deep, deep healing there. So I'm quite sure as a chiropractor, she probably didn't invite all of her patients that come to church, but she could see that what was going on was far beyond just the physical.
Yes.
Far beyond what was going on with my back and my ability to walk and the pain level and all that. She could see that. And that experience was a direct result of this injury, which just seemed like another challenge in my life. And that's the moment it all changed. Yeah.
Interesting that this change happened from such a painful event.
Yes.
We're so used to saying, pain is bad. It's bad. Push it away.
Sometimes it's a gateway, Colleen. And I don't say that as though anyone would necessarily seek it out. I feel like I was so ardent in my belief that I was all alone and that I carried the weight of the world. That's what it took for me. But not everyone is that stubborn. That was one of many spiritual 2x4s, that there was no getting past it.
Right. Isn't it interesting that those moments in our life of utter and complete surrender, it may be such excruciating pain that brings us to that moment, but it's unforgettable. And in those moments in my life, I know it was extremely painful, but I don't remember the pain. I remember this deep joy that finally got uncovered and started bubbling up through the pain. And it just wrapped me and the pain all up in the same blanket with such soothing and such healing and ultimately freedom. Do you ever feel like Brenda, that you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders? I'm so glad you could join us here on We Be the Change. I hope Brenda's story of deep healing through surrender has inspired you on your journey. Please join us next week for the next segment, Facing Despair and Finding the Way Home. Thanks for listening, and please share your thoughts. You're invited to access supportive bonus content, fresh resources, and your free e-guide, Out of Your Head into Your Light, at songrise.live. This is your host and Essential Connections coach, Colleen Akiko. Until next time, may the sacred find you even in the small things. Aloha.